Hey, housewives.
Hey, housewives, welcome back to our podcast. We're so excited for another week and another fabulous guest. And I'm going to let Tori introduce Joe to everybody.
Yes, and I pulled up the bio and everything because I wanted to make sure.
It was
Here we go.
official.
It was official because this I knew I was going to screw it up. We've got Joe Evermore, who's a climbing enthusiast. He has three boys: Sam Adventure, Sylvan Lightyear, and Joey Danger, and has got another boy on the way. They also have Ember Moonlight, who lives in their hearts forever. But they are quite the adventure family because you may or may not have seen it, but his son, Sam, climbed El Capitan at the age of 8. So
Yeah.
thank you, Joe, for being on here today with us. We're so excited to have you.
Oh, I'm excited to be here. This is gonna be fun.
Yes.
So let's start with just share with our listeners just a little bit about you, Joe, and your wife, Ann, and your family, and how you came up with the very creative middle names. I love them.
That's good. Well, first of all, you got to listen to God and you got to like hear a name. A name is one of the most sacred things that there is. It's something you really need to approach with like some almost like a bit of holiness to it because it feels eternal. It feels like it's gonna last for a long time. And so we listened in and we actually Sam, there was a famous adventurer named Sir Samuel Baker, and most people haven't heard of him, but he used to hunt, like this is in the 1800s. He would hunt these giant elephants with one of those, the Civil War rifles that you had to like reload. He would like
Yes.
hunt an elephant, and if the elephant gets mad, like you're dead. And
Yes.
you gotta,
Yeah, you missed
yeah.
that shot. You got one.
Yeah, and but like he's this extraordinary adventurer of his time who actually then became a great abolitionist and ended slavery around the world. And so that was, we felt like God had kind of gave us that name, and then we, since he was this adventurer, we added the name Adventures. That's where Sam Adventure came from. And so each of our boys really is just, it's just what we heard from the Lord and how he put it together. So Sylvan is like God kind of show us that his life's going to be at a really big scale, and a light year is 6 trillion miles, and so like that's kind of the biggest form of measurements that people use. It's kind of a
Mhm.
big
Yeah.
map. And then Sylvan is named after Sylvan Lake in South Dakota, which is a place that my wife and I kind of fell in love at, and then like we fell in love climbing there, and then we actually got married at Sylvan Lake. We liked it so much, and so
Aw.
that's kind of where Sylvan came from.
Yeah.
And then Joey Danger, that's the name I should have had. And so my parents did that in philosophy, but they did come up with Joe. So yeah, he is
Awesome.
full of it too. Like each of these boys, we see it now, like more and more. They really, these names really fit who they are. So
That's awesome. Okay,
I love
now,
that.
but Evermore is not your original last name. You changed it from Baker to Evermore. Do you mind sharing that story?
yeah, that's quite a scary thing to do, by the way, and hard when you do it the way we did it. But yeah, we felt called, just like in the Bible, when you see these people, like they have these experiences and that their name changes. And that's something we lived through. We lived through something that was so life-changingly beautiful that we said it's kind of like a reset on our family. And we went and talked to our parents about it. So we had a daughter. After having three boys, you find out you're having a daughter. It's like the most exciting thing in the world because
Mhm.
it seems different and exotic, and wow, our house has been always engineered for boys, and suddenly we're having a girl. And there's quite a bit of enthusiasm with that. And then we go to the doctor for a normal sonogram, and she at first we thought she was telling us that our daughter was going to be disabled, but we like couldn't hear what she was actually saying. And then she was like, "No, Joe, you're misunderstanding me. Your daughter's going to die. Like she's gonna develop normally in the womb, but after she's born, she's not going to be able to live apart from your wife." And let me tell you, that's something that you're not ready for. And then to have a doctor immediately to be an advocate for abortion, to me was so beyond weird, because the whole reason you go to the doctor is like to protect the baby. to, to, to keep the baby alive. It's like birth is supposed to be a very natural and normal thing. Like, what
Mhm.
are you talking about? Why would we terminate our baby? Like, and we need to find someone who's going to do something to save our baby. And so that was such a weird place to walk away from. And my wife immediately fell into this dark depression. And so we had a different house at the time. She went down to this basement room as our guest room, basically closed herself in and wasn't interested in talking to anybody. And with three boys, our house would probably burn down if I decided to continue my work. And so my clients were very gracious with me when I told them the story. And I just started, I spent the time just with my boys, and I started trying to figure out, how do I get my wife out of this dark well? And I came up with the idea to, maybe we could really bring some meaning to this by taking Ember to all of our favorite places. And we're a mountain climbing family, so we set a bunch of our favorite mountain summits and things we wanted to do. And I kind of laid it out, and I began to present to Anne. I said, what if we took our baby on this road trip? And I convinced my clients, just give me some time off. And I knew that that would awaken some things in her heart to do that. And at the beginning of the journey, it was so hard and so dark. I literally was praying, like, God, like, just have mercy on us. Like, can we just miscarry this baby? We're not going to kill our baby, but like, is there a way that we could just find a way out of this? And yet, going on that journey, we sat around all these campfires. That's how we came up with the name Ember. And we just begin to sing to our daughter and pray for our daughter. And the boys fell in love with our daughter. And by the end of that journey, I was like almost trying to pray and grasp and say, like, maybe there's a way that, like, November just won't come, because we began to say this line, like, Ember till November, because in November, when she's born, was when we like start losing her. And it was such an interesting time. Like, you don't get that opportunity usually. When somebody dies, it's usually pretty, at least my experience, is kind of fast, and you don't have like a date on it.
Yeah.
And yet we had like fallen in love with this girl, and we knew it was coming. And then when my boys got back, they were really sad to know that Ember was going to miss Christmas. And so we got the HOA upset by decorating our house early and putting up the Christmas tree, and which is still a tradition in our home. We start Christmas before Halloween in our house now. And so, like, it was like we really fell in love with our daughter. And on November 4th, she came, and this little girl lived for an hour and 6 minutes outside the womb. And it was by far the most transcendent and meaningful, and life-changing event of our whole
Mhm.
life. And it was like suddenly, like, sudden there was a new way of seeing, the new way of living that we we began to like follow. And out of that came like a new name with it. And so
It's
Ember always had name too. We always called her Ember Moonlight Evermore, as though she had this heavenly address. And it was way easier to change our name than anything else. Like, it just felt right to fit with
yeah.
her.
It's so beautiful, and to have already had her name that before, and then just to cling to that, and to create that for all five of you, to have that with her forever is just amazing. It's beautiful.
And now your wife
Yeah,
is oh, go ahead.
it's good. Yeah, she's pregnant with another boy, and it's okay for you guys to feel bad for her. With four boys is a lot for everybody,
But
especially when you add me to the mix.
that's okay. I mean, she is a climbing enthusiast too. So it's not like she's the girly girl. Like, I mean, she's the princess of your household and she's going to get spoiled by those boys. But yeah, but your wife is absolutely on board and behind these adventures and these expeditions that you are doing with the boys. And so, like, that is what's really incredible. So let's switch gears here. You started with Sam, and he was just a natural climber and you just leaned into that because you climb. And then how did you have an 8-year-old have a goal of climbing El Capitan?
Good question. So in our home, it doesn't seem very normal, but it's very normal in our home. Every year, each kid gets one goal. Each person takes on one goal. We call it a Masagi goal. It's actually a kind of a deep, a spiritual aspect of what we do. And so the goals have 3 rules. One, it has to be visual. So we put these on our wall and really kind of celebrate the kids in that way. And secondly, they have to be so hard. You have to work on it a little bit every day. So we try to set them that seem impossible and where you have to really kind of work on them. Like Sam had to learn a whole series of disciplines to be able to do what he did. And I mean, learn in like the most bold way. I mean, it's not like you could teach this stuff in a classroom. We had to take him up a bunch of really hard things to get him to ready. And then the rule number 3 is you can't die. And so rule number
The
3 means
basic
that we're going
rule.
to do this. Yeah. We're going to do this with the most intent that we can. We're going to have the right team. We're going to have the right strategy. We're going to have the right gear. We're going to be ready. And if we're not, we're going to turn back. And so it's rule number 3 is actually really important to us, you know, and in a way it's like rule number 3 is so interesting because everybody kind of has rule number 3, you know, you can't die, but it's like, it's like in our house, we kind of say it's like safety third. You know, we think safety is so important. We put safety third, you know, because if safety was this idol we bowed to, we probably wouldn't set these kind of goals that we do, you know, like, because they aren't the safest things that there are out there. But setting goals with our kids in this way, man, it develops so many things. We see discipline and self-confidence and self-mastery forming in our boys as we're driving them toward these big goals. And when they hit the goals, we really, really celebrate them well. And that's another piece that's like, I think is a little different culturally. Like most kids get celebrated in America, like when they have like their birthday, you know, but like everybody that I know now as a grown up, like none of them think their birthday is a big deal. Like, and anyone that does think their birthday is a big deal is someone that like, I probably don't even want to hang around. Like, that's kind of a weird thing, you know, like,
Celebrating
like
Birthday month girl over here.
Full disclosure.
you throw a big birthday party for yourself every year. That's good.
I have to share my birthday month with 2 other family members. Okay. Tracy and my husband share birthday, October 4th. And then my youngest is October 26th.
This is my youngest, October 26th.
Yes. And then my birthday is the 18th.
It's a big party.
Yeah. Mind you, we didn't know each other like before 7 years ago. Like,
right.
Our worlds are so weird. Like
out of the 5 of her family, no, how many in your 6 out of 6? You know, 1/3 of her family matches half of my family's birthdays. I mean, it's insane. But anyways, all about a birthday month. So.
Well, but my point is, like, we need to celebrate our kids for what they're accomplishing, what God's doing in their life, what they're becoming.
We talked about
we can actually do that. People can do that with birthdays, and so, but I just put it out that that's a really important aspect of like setting big goals, working toward them step by step, and then accomplishing them and then celebrating them, and then completing that loop every year on a regular basis with each kid is kind of the philosophy of our home. And so there's a whole series of mountains that most people think we're mentally ill for taking our kids on that we've done.
Okay, well, for those that aren't familiar with climbing and the mountain El Capitan, like, can you explain a little bit what that included?
Yeah, so climbing El Capitan is, imagine just walking on your fingers on a sidewalk for like a mile. Okay, but then imagine that like straight up. And now you can't do it in the same amount of time. So now you have to do it over 5 days. So for those 5 days, you're either hanging from your fingers and your hands, or you're hanging from your anchors. Like there are very few ledges on the wall. It is like totally sheer. It feels kind of like you're on the moon. You can't even see a person. You're so far away, like from the bottom to the top, like without binoculars. Like you can make out like a car or a bus driving by, but it feels like you're in another like world, always in a vertical world. You sleep by hanging tents that like we literally, they're called portaledges that we hang on the wall. Everything you need to survive, you have to carry up. So that means for us, we had to carry about 200 pounds of just water. Like you don't even think about water, but like water is the worst possible thing to run out of on a wall. And so, and you drink a lot of it during the day because the sun just bakes it out of you. And so, yeah, we carried a ton of water, but like we had to create these advanced hauling systems to, with our weight, haul up all of this gear. And it's a big ordeal to carry that a mile straight up.
And for our listeners, who went with you on this trek?
Yes. So it was a four-person team. So me and two of my buddies, and then Sam. And so, and really, I engineered the plan so that I could always stay about within 10 or 15 feet of Sam and really kind of be there emotionally with him. He had to do everything, but I wanted to be like in that proximity because I was scared that he would have a, a mental breakdown as part of it,
Yeah.
which he didn't. He didn't actually ever get there. Got a little sassy once. But other than that, he was great.
Maybe when he was tired.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so but there was something else that you shared with us about that on how your wife, because she's a climbing enthusiast. This is something that she could have been on, but you've got two kiddos at home. Like somebody's got to be there with them, right? So, but there was something unique that she did so she could support him. What was that?
Yeah, so we had rented an Airbnb in the valley, and so like she would come into the meadow every day, and she'd have binoculars and a radio, what they called Rocky Talkies, and she would call up to Sam, and they would just chat, like, "Hey, how's it going? How'd yesterday go? What are you looking forward to today?" And it was so precious. Like Sam, that would be like a highlight of Sam's day. He was always looking forward to it. If she was a little late, he'd be like looking for her, and so it's definitely like a beautiful part of this. And I really got to see too how important she was in just his emotions, working his way up this very difficult thing. And on the last day of the trip, we had painted this giant sheet that said, "Love you, Mom, almost there." And from the bottom of El Capitan, even with binoculars, you can barely make out someone on the wall, but you could see this, and it was just such a cool thing for her to call up and see a sign. And Sam was so proud and excited for her to see that. And then, so that was like the last morning. And then she hiked the 9 miles up to the top of El Capitan. And when Sam crossed over the top, like she was like right there. And I'm so glad she got to be a part of the whole thing. It was super cool.
It's so awesome. And we got to see like glimpses of some videos and things that you have shared. And that's on your guys' website, right?
That we haven't launched that one yet. I think on Instagram we put up like one video of like Ann seeing the banner.
Yeah.
But we haven't published that film yet. That actually, we're doing a film premiere this next Friday. We're going to show that film and some of our other films here in Colorado Springs. And then after that, we might publish it online.
That's awesome.
Well, we'll definitely be sharing all those all of your
Yes.
social media links, all the website in our show notes for our listeners so they can follow and see some of those clips because it is. I mean, you guys like watching it is just like
it's amazing. And
it's amazing.
We've obviously, we've heard other podcasts with you on it and we've talked to you many times. And I think just being able for moms to see this little boy doing what he did is just so incredible. And for some of us, like myself, it's hard to even picture my kid ever doing something like that. Whereas, yes, they can, maybe not particularly rock climbing, but in something in a different grand scheme of things for them, they absolutely can. We absolutely loved your goal setting and just how you inspire, your kids and the encouragement that you give to our listeners and others to encourage your kids to have a goal outside of it could be for their sport or their schoolwork, but anything that they want to do and help them set that goal and then go after it. I think so many times, like, you play a sport, okay, go to practice, go to the sport, you want to get a A or B. Okay, well, at least do your homework. Like it's just, those are just small and measurable. But what you have done is created such a vision and have been through all of it with your kids. Now, one thing that we would love for you to share is a goal that you set with your son, that you went to Switzerland for, what was the
Matterhorn.
Thank you. And didn't make your goal and how you handled
Yeah,
that.
we couldn't get over rule number 3, and so we climbed the Matterhorn on the most perfect day of the year, literally the most perfect day. And there's cutoff times on these mountains because it's an altitude-based mountain. And the idea is that if you don't get to this point by here, you turn back. If you don't get to this point by here, you turn back. And what kills most climbers on mountains is not doing that. Is like usually it's that and a combination of other things, but it's that is the beginning of the end for them. If they would have turned back right then when they should have, they would have lived. And we missed our cutoff time by minutes. Like and it was like, I mean, everything within me after talking about a mountain for a year and visualizing it wanted to just keep going, and yet the right decision was, we didn't make it, because what was going to happen is there's several reasons why you don't want to go past the cutoff time. But one of the reasons was it meant that we were last in line. So there was about maybe 30 or 40 climbers on our ridge ahead of us, and they would all be descending while we're ascending. And so we're basically going to bottleneck on the route, slowing us down even more. And there's potential for like rock fall on us. And so I just made the call. I was like, next year we're going to be first in line. We're going to beat all these other people up here, and we're not going to miss our cutoff time. And so we turned back, and that's not a fun thing to do. That's actually a really hard thing to do, especially when we've hit every other goal. But it led to a lot of good conversations between me and Sam, and I second guessed it a couple times. But about 3 weeks ago, some climbers climbing the Matterhorn blew through their cutoff times, and all 3 of them died on the same route, on the same mountain. And like when I researched more about them, there was a number of things that they were totally wrong in. They shouldn't have been up there. But it just reminded me of how important it was to like obey the rules and respect the mountain. That's what matters when you're mountain climbing. Like are we respecting the mountain? Are we ready for the mountain? Things like that. A question for you guys: do you guys have husbands that ever kind of challenge you guys with, wanting to do things with your kids where you like let them go? Or what's that like in your relationship? Does everybody have this, or is it just me?
My husband more so than me, for sure. He definitely, I would say, mom, loosen up. I get that. I've had that many times, and it's so funny because I grew up a total farm girl, like doing all the things, riding, all of the ATVs and shooting guns and being barefoot. And like, like I was free that way, granted I had boundaries and I knew my rules and it was safe and everything. And then I had kids, and this weird, I don't know, mom fear comes, and you're like, what's that? And it took a while. I mean, our kids do now ride, ATVs. And when we go visit family on a property in the middle of nowhere, where it's safe and things, we allow them to do all kinds of things and, in nature. And he is so much more like, just let him climb that tree. Just let him do all that, which we do now that they're a lot older. But when they were younger, I was definitely like, over the top of them more than I needed to be.
Yeah. And what about you, Tori?
I would say my husband is really great because my girls her kids are in sports too, but he's really great at the encouraging discipline around the sports that they want to be good at. And that's where I personally get in trouble, because I want to be like, when somebody gets not yelled at, corrected, and they come crying to mommy, I'm like, okay, well, it's okay. Like, let's figure out another way to do this. And and he's like, no, quit. And I'm like, sorry, that's my, and so, but and he's like, they have to learn how to be corrected and adjust from a coach perspective. And if they want something bad enough, they will push through to like doing the discipline on their own and, and say, okay, dad, what do you got for me? And he goes, and if they don't want it, they don't. He's like, I'm not going to force them to do it. And so I think there's a lot of that for because we're Johnson County, a majority of our listeners are suburban
Local.
mamas, but I would love there to be more of that, like, let them go, let them adventure, let them figure it out. Like, like don't just be under them, like waiting, like, okay, I'll be right. I mean, like you said, be within 10 feet, so you're there for the emotional support, but like, and they see that.
Well, we've kind of talked about this before when we, first initially had our conversation. I think there has been so much more fear put on us as parents in the last few years, and information overload of like what's going on everywhere. And, we educate people here, of how much, fentanyl's in the area and trafficking and, all the things that are like coming. I think we become this so much more like hypersensitive to just letting your kid go ride his bike and go play at the park and climb a tree and, just figure out being a kid. It's so much where we live, particularly, it's so much more on guard and it's safe. Yes. But like, we're more on guard than if we lived like how I grew up in the country and just exploring. And I think it does make a difference where you live and how you respond.
Yeah.
I definitely think we need to be more like y'all.
Well, I think at some point in every great relationship is that a woman has to kind of let go. And I watched Anne do that. I'd say she's good at it, but it's not like it's easy for her. Like she had reservations about some of the things we did and we talked it through. And she said, okay, I trust you. I believe that, this is the best thing for our boys. And I'm going to be down here in the meadow watching you, and it's like but at some level, I think, as I look at just the comments I get on our social media and the people that want to call CPS on us, there's a lot of moms out there that want to just lead and they want to like, not allow their husband to like, to take risks and to do things that really develop their kids. But like, if you want a kid that's developing self-mastery, especially in a samurai sport like climbing, we have to actually enter into a world that's not fully, ziplocked. It's not totally in every way safe, and yet like you look at the boys we're creating, like they're confident and powerful and able to, attack a big task that wouldn't seem impossible to somebody else. But it's because Sam knows is I looked up at El Capitan and it looked impossible, and then I did it, and it's like, that's like, I wanted that for him. And that's some of the role of the father to do that in ways. And I, I just encourage your listeners who are women to like work with your husbands, listen to them. They love your children. They don't want to kill them. They actually want to develop that are really good,
Yeah.
and I'm witnessing that. I just think there's something deep there. Like, cause even I was recently learning that just even the hormones that a woman gets, like when she's like breastfeeding, that my wife gets when she's breastfeeding, and that bonding she gets, I get that in wrestling with the boys, in chasing them around our home. It's like God wired it in a way where it's like we're doing like these dangerous things together. And it's like that's bonding us together in a different way. And it's like it's so crucial that we like, as we're developing kids, that we like see that and encourage that, and yeah, and the listeners encourage that in their husbands.
I love that. That was a great analogy.
Yes. Now Sam's goals, right? Okay. El Capitan and Matterhorn. I mean, these are the places that you're having to plan for, you're having to make arrangements for. This is, I mean, you're doing a lot of the leg work, right? He's doing the physical work to get there. But for you as a parent, I can imagine it's completely inconvenient. Now, granted, you're going into it knowing that, but what I'm finding with parents is that at a certain point we get lazy, right? There's not that balance of either parents are trying to live vicariously through their children where their whole lives are their kids, versus the parent that's like, yeah, sure, I might be at your ball game, I might not, I don't know, kind of thing. Like, I got a poker game tonight. Who still plays poker? I don't know. Point being, but it's an inconvenience to help your boys do this. Can you kind of talk about how you have balanced that? And yeah, I mean, because it puts your marriage, your job, I mean, and then your kid, it's an inconvenience at the end of the day. I mean, granted, I know that you're wanting to do it and it's a goal that you have as a parent, but it takes away from your personal time.
Yeah. So some ways I think about that is like, so first of all, I want to architect the life that I want to live. I don't just want it to like kind of happen randomly. I want to actually think through, okay, if we sign up for this, this is what that means. This is how many weekends that means. This is how many like Wednesday nights this means. You know what I mean? And really say, is that the right decision for us? Instead of like, I just think I want to get into soccer or I just want to get into T-ball. Like, it's like, let's actually really evaluate what this means and what we're going to have to say no to because of it. And so that's one. So we're cautious in saying yes to many things, like because we already have some big things, you know. The other thing is, since we're architecting the life we want to live, we want to bring in things into integration. So like this summer, Sylvan and Joey's climbs were both in the Cirque of the Towers of Wyoming, which meant that all 5 of us hiked in, actually 6 of us because we had the baby in Aunt's tummy, all of us backpacked into the Wind River Range and spent 7 days together, you know, camping, you know, backpacking, like, you know, we got to filter your own water and cook over a fire, you know, and it's like, that was like a full family adventure, you know? And so like, it wasn't like taking us away. Whereas Sam's journey was like one kid one-on-one for I took him for 10 days on this international travel to Switzerland, you know, but I didn't do that for each boy. I will at some point do that for each boy, but this summer, like most of it was like our family together. So a lot of weekends, the whole family were together. We go to the, you know, the cliff together, where we call it cragging, where we're cragging together, climbing together, practicing together. It's like we're trying to bring those things into integration instead of like, okay, I'm just the chauffeur that drives my kid around or my kids around to all these different sports, drops them off, and then that's their life, you know, my life. Like, let's actually think through, is that the life that you want? Is that the life you want for your kids? Is that the best life for your kids? You know, some people can focus in on like one sport and do really awesome. Like I have a friend who does soccer. Their family like is all in on soccer and they paint their faces and stuff. And like, it's the craziest thing. It's go on. Like they are all in on that. And that makes a lot of sense to me. But then I got other friends that like, they don't even know which way's up because all they do is drive their kids around, you know? And I think figuring it out and actually thinking through your schedule, your life, your decisions, like I think is critical to managing things. And the other aspect of that too is that it's not about being balanced. It's really about like having the life you want, because it's just like running a marathon. There's times when it's a little out of balance. Like it's like, but is this what you wanted? Is this what you signed up for? So
No, that's great. And I love that because we were just talking about the time that we spent in the car.
Yeah, I was.
From her kids. I mean, but when you got 4 kids going in 4 different sports,
going 3 different schools.
In 3 different schools.
That's my season.
Wow.
Yeah. So
we're doing that too right now. We got 2 schools for our kids, and that's already like, wow, this is pulling us.
Yep.
Yeah.
Audible is my best friend. Lots of books. It's funny. My daughter, when my daughter and we have a book for on the way to school and we have an Audible book for on the way home. So like a couple different stories that we're in right now. So that's fun.
Like what's a book right now? What are you listening to now?
So my daughter, we're listening to, I don't know if you guys have heard of the Terrible Twos book. They're pranksters. They're hilarious. They're in like elementary school and middle school pranksters. And then we're reading The Secret Zoo is another one. And it's like a series of like a zoo series. And
with animals and all the things
And
like that.
one
That's fun.
escapes, and a girl is lost, and the brother is like trying to find his sister. And it's so cool. And I love it because I always pause and I ask my daughter a question, like just to make sure she's not like staring out the window, which she totally can be. But I love it because I might be the one that was just driving and I'm like, wait, what did I just miss? And
Right.
she's got the answer, So it's fun. That's kind of how we kill our time in the car. Just lots of driving. But the book that I just finished, we were just talking about it before, is The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry by John Mark Comer. If you haven't read it, it's amazing. It's a really great book.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That I would, so I liked how you said it's not about balance. It's about,
Integration.
it's about integration, and are you living the life that you
Mhm.
want? And how often we sacrifice 50% of our life because, well, this isn't working for me, but it allows me to do this, this, and this. So I'm okay with it. But at some point, that 50%, like, are you living the life that you want?
Mhm.
And, like, God created us to love him and to have joy abundantly, and not just, be at the end of the day and just go, "Whew, I got to do this again."
Mhm.
And I love how you have, as a family, have figured
Mhm.
that, and like you, perfect word, integration, and it's working
Yeah.
within those, and you're creating boundaries for your kids at the same time. Like, this is where our priorities are, and this is
Yeah.
what we've got, and or we're able to do this because daddy goes off and goes to these goes visits these clients and things like that. And it's more family involvement, or
Yeah.
like knowledge, like kids
Yeah.
within, like, that know what's going, like, yeah, we're doing this because we have a big goal, because Sam has a goal, because Joey has a goal, because Sylvan has a goal.
Mhm.
Like, and letting it, and not just, it's intentional. That's what I'm trying to say. It's intentional.
Well,
Yeah.
well, I mean, like, so I have one friend who's always broke. He's like always broke, and I'm like, you and your wife drive like Teslas. Like these are like you have like $150,000 worth of cars. Like why? Like why? Like you can never do anything. Every time I invite you to do something, you can't. You know, but like you made that decision. You know what I mean? Is that really what you wanted? Like deeply? I mean, like couldn't you be fine with like cars are worth like half that much? And come and do stuff. Like, and I think there's a lot of people they don't realize the decisions they make and how those really begin to cascade to the rest of their life. And I think it's so important. Like, how is this decision going to affect our story? Is this the story that we want to tell with our lives? Does this bring forth the story that we've been telling? Or is this, something that's going to hold us back from it? And like continually coming back to those basic aspects when we got a big decision to make, I think would help a lot of your listeners. Instead of thinking about your life as balanced, like just think about the decisions you're making that are going to provide freedom, life, and like spell out the life you want. Like I think we have a pretty simple life, actually. It's a lot of fun, but it's fairly simple.
Well, and I think now people are realizing that there are so many different options. Like, we have a friend who she's homeschooling one kid, she's got one kid in co-op, and then she's got one kid in public school. Like, but that works for her and her family and her kids' learning styles. Like, that's the season that they're in, and the flexibility. Like, I mean, Tracy's youngest is in a Montessori style of school that works best for her, but it's intentional, and it's that there are options, that not every job is showing up to a cubicle 9 to 5 every single day and you're living within those 3 walls. If you're willing to take the risk, there are other things that you can do and other ways. But on our last vacation, I just admitted to my husband, I'm like, what if we don't do middle school? What if we homeschool? And he goes, I'm who are you?
Who are you?
Who are, and I'm asking, did those words come out of my mouth? But I was so having the time of my life with my family on vacation, and I'm like, I want more of this, like them, and and I was like, why do they have to be chained to a desk for 8 hours a day? They're getting an incredible education. But do I want my kids to go to college? Probably not. You don't want my kid to be a surgeon? Nope, neither one. I wouldn't trust it. But it's like those things. Like, okay, so
those are the moments that, like, we say this all the time, or I say this all the time in my house, like, what's your dream? Like, what are you dreaming about today? Like, and sometimes it's like, I want a Dr. Pepper,
yeah.
and sometimes it's like, I want to go here. I want to do this, and it's true. We have to keep having those conversations. And I think that's the beauty that came out of the pandemic for most of us, is it's like, we were two parents that were working and four kids were in school. Like, it was just like, we were doing the thing. And now it's like, my husband bought a business and I switched what I was doing. And now I'm doing the podcast. Like, we're just constantly flowing, and kids have moved, but we're so much more intentional. We're so much more at peace. There's a little bit more contentment in the family, like, and I think that that's kind of ultimately what we're just encouraging, is to stay inspirational, stay, encouraging your kids to dream and set goals, and don't lock yourself in to,
and don't settle.
yeah.
I think people settle too often.
Yeah.
As we're building our kids, and you guys mentioned college, such an interesting conversation there too, because it's like, because of this new introduction of AI, which we're right at the forefront of still, and between AI and robotics, like, what's coming, we have no idea what the jobs are going to be available for our kids in 10 or 20 years. Like it is happening so quickly. I have a friend who employed 250 engineers to develop these microchips. And once they figured out how to do it with AI, he literally let go the entire 250 engineers, because the microchip gets made by AI like instantly, like a design. And it's like, those people are six-figure people, like, which radically made the value of his company so much more. And it's like, the landscape is changing. Like, even things like surgery, like why couldn't a robot do these things? Like, now there's high-end robotics. And nowadays they have surgeons from the other side of the planet that can already do a surgery on you through robotics. Why couldn't the AI do that? And so everything is like on the edge. And so we want to think about, what are the skills that we actually should give our kids, and like that they will actually need, is a conversation me and Anna have been talking about. Like, they're not going to learn these things in school, college either.
No. And I mean, we just, more and more stuff comes out about college, and, I went to college. I have a degree that I didn't use, but God used it in his way for his glory of making those 3 years work out. But you're right. Like, the jobs that exist. I mean, I had an AI machine take my order through a drive-through. She got it wrong.
Every time
we
pull up in a drive-through, and my husband will be like, person, speak to a person.
Yeah.
I want a person.
Representative.
Every time.
Funny.
But where are these jobs, like these entry-level jobs, going to be for our kids, when, like, I remember working at a putt-putt place for $6.50 an hour, like, now there's self-checkout lanes everywhere, and I bag my own groceries, and my kid can't be a grocer, bag somebody's groceries for their first job. Like, you're right. It's going to be a different world for these kids.
Yeah. So we got to evaluate what are we really teaching them that's going to last through that, that change, that could give them an edge on that. So some of the things I think about is, one is like, I want all my kids to have a brand. I want them to have a memorable, personal brand that they are beginning to form and figure out. Like, I want them to be able to sell. Like, they will always need somebody who can sell something, like, who can actually, like, pitch and win and close. Like, that's not I'm bad at selling. That's an acquired skill that everyone can learn.
Yeah.
I also want them to understand, like, basic economics of how to build a business. I'm not necessarily saying they're all entrepreneurs, but they need to understand, like, the basic things like overhead, and, and how a business cash flow works, and, basic things. Like, I want them all tested in that, because we're going into a landscape that is so wild and and exciting, like, in a lot of ways. Like, this could be a very exciting time for some people, and a very scary time for other people.
Yeah. No, that's Those are very good points. And that might be a second episode that we have you back on here to talk about like the those kind of items that what skills our kids really need, because clearly you've thought about this a lot more than we have. Um,
Well, in context of this podcast, like your kids are going to need courage. They're going to need self-discipline. They're going to need like, a vision for what they want to do with their life, the ability to set a big goal. They need the ability to look at something really hard and say, all right, I'm going to figure this out. Like those are things that like you can't just give your kids. You have to actually architect an environment and then bring them into it. And in that environment, they discover it. You can't just tell a kid about bravery. Like you actually have to have them do it, and then they begin to gain it. Courage is something you build up in you. And so
no,
yeah,
I
so
love
as we think about those things, those are the things I'm working on with climbing.
I love it.
Yes, I love it. Absolutely. And I'll say we have done that very well with our sarcastic humor and wit. Our children are very witty.
They're good.
They're very witty. And I'm like, that's great. Good. Okay. You're going to need to be able to laugh and laugh at yourself in this world, if anything. So with that, we just want to say thank you so much, Joe, for your time and sharing your wisdom and your experience. And we are so thankful. All of your information where people can find you and follow Sam and his adventures, we will put in the show notes for our listeners. And so just thank you so much for your time and wisdom, Joe. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, it's good to be here. See you guys.
All right, thanks.
Bye.